Welcome to Blood Moon Milk, the astrology show that comes out every new and full moon to help guide you on your mindfulness, meditation, and manifestation journey. I'm your host, Aurora, and I like to talk about the astrology of these lunations to help you. So let's talk about the new moon in Pisces, which is coming up on February 27th, which is just over a week away. Um, it's going to be kicking off quite the interesting month if we think of March as the beginning of the astrological month, with the beginning of this new moon in Pisces. This is the last new moon of the year of before we start the whole zodiac cycle over again with the new moon in Aries. So we'll have the new moon in Pisces, the full moon in Virgo, and then that's it. That's sort of the end of the year. And maybe the end of this show. I don't know. Um, I've told myself I would be doing it every full moon, new moon. I'd do it for a year and see how things went. And while I've had a lot of fun and really enjoyed getting back into the habit and the swing of things, um, the numbers just kind of aren't totally making sense. So I'm changing tactics a little bit. I'm now hosting virtual workshops, so via Zoom, that you can sign up for at my website, bloodmoonmilk.com. If that's something you're interested in, go check it out. And so I think that maybe these updates will be I don't know, they're just going to change a little bit. I'm always looking to improve and iterate my work and make it more streamlined, both for me as a creator, because I'm a one-person team. So writing this, editing this, and actually having client sessions and marketing this and keeping up with all the financial stuff, is kind of a lot. And so if the podcast isn't making a lot of sense to keep doing, um, then, I have to sort of shift the angle a little bit. I'm not leaving astrology. I'm leaving a production method that isn't necessarily working anymore. But I'm still making and writing the daily dose. It still hits people's inboxes every day. If you want more of my astrology, please sign up for that because that lets me know you're listening. And if I get enough subscribers for that, then, it kind of helps me to keep going making this show too. It really does support me as a creator. So if you love astrology and you want to learn more, it's a great way to learn a little bit day by day, but also get a heads up about the cosmic weather headed your way that day before it unfolds. So it's like your little cosmic umbrella. So head over to bloodmoonmilk.com to subscribe to the daily dose, sign up for a workshop, and let's go ahead and hop into the astrology of this new moon in Pisces. Because, like I said, we are on the verge of some very interesting cosmic weather. And we have already been in that kind of in that sort of arena already, but let me move my camera just a little bit so I can see my screen. Okay, so this is the new moon in Pisces. It'll be happening February 27th at 7:44 p.m. Eastern time. So this is the chart for the new moon. And boy, is it just absolutely loaded with some pretty intense energies. Pisces, how are you doing out there? Because you guys and gals, y'all, and theys, thems, and gays, all of you, like all of you. And if you're a Pisces right now, you are in the midst of some very heady astrological weather. So just check in with me. Let me know how you're doing because boy, this is a lot of intensity that we're looking at. And so let's go ahead and start with it. We've got the moon conjunct the sun here at 9 degrees Pisces. This is typical for a new moon. This is every new moon that happens. You know, the sun and moon coming together. That's when we don't see the moon in the sky. It's quiet. It's a time for contemplation and gratitude, and also planting seeds and beginning that manifestation cycle. So look at, and this is what I do in my astrology workshops with folks, is I help you find where the new moon is occurring in your chart and looking at other aspects going on, and help people sort of divine and decide what's going on in their life, where to focus their intentions and attentions. And that energy, choosing where to focus, is going to be really, really important over the next month or so, because Pisces is the master manifester sign. It gets whatever it puts its attentions to. And there is a lot of sort of loud, chaotic, scary news out there. And this is on purpose. This is intentional. Um, and it's to keep people afraid and to keep people scattered. But I'm telling you, if you can sort of rise above the fray, if you will, rise above that sort of white noise and the chaos, and lean into a sense of everything will be okay somehow. We don't necessarily have to know how it's going to work out, but tap into your inner strength and your core beliefs of strength and understanding and empathy. Um, that will be helpful, because with Pisces energy specifically, if we get sucked in to the chaos and the noise, the more it feeds it. And the more chaotic it becomes. So it's really important to be aware of your thoughts more now than maybe ever, with all of these planets currently in Pisces, because it manifests whatever it pays attention to. So if you're happy and if you feel secure in yourself and you feel a real profound sense that justice and is right in the world, which I know can be difficult at the moment, but if you can find some way in your life to identify that silver lining, it can help to quiet that exterior noise. Um, so we have 9 degrees of Pisces where this new moon is occurring. So make sure you're taking a look at your charts, looking at where 9 degrees of Pisces is for you, what house it's in. So for the chart of this new moon, this is in the 6th house of day-to-day activities and work. So it could feel like this whole like daily cycle is beginning anew in some ways. We also have the vertex here at 14 degrees. So we could start to see some momentum pick up when that sun moves over that 14th degree mark. And then we also have Saturn in Pisces as well. And Saturn has been in Pisces now since March of 2022. I believe it moved into Pisces like March 8th or something like that, back in 2022. And since then, Pisces have really been feeling the brunt of Saturn's wisdom and authoritativeness, like really kind of raining down on their lives, in whatever part of your life that Saturn has been hovering in, where Pisces is, has been really tested. So first, this could look like new responsibilities, or and Pisces is a really creative sign. So if you're a creator or a creative person, you have been learning how to manage that creativity in a way that is more structured, which is so like antithetical to the way Pisces energy reads, which is very sort of boundless and sort of wispy, energetic flow state of consciousness. It really doesn't like boundaries. It's divine inspiration. So Saturn has been here for quite some time, teaching all of us, wherever we have Pisces at in our charts, some real karmic lessons. We also have Mercury at 24 degrees of Pisces, which Mercury is getting ready to go retrograde next month. One of the reasons why I said that March is going to be pretty intense. We're going to have a Mercury retrograde, and we're also going to have a Venus retrograde. Venus is currently, look how far away she is from the sun right now. This is how you know that there's going to be a Venus retrograde coming up. When she is that far ahead of the sun, she really doesn't like to get more than 30 degrees away from the sun, maybe just slightly more sometimes. And then she goes retrograde. She cannot physically be that far away from wherever he is to our observation here on the planet. And that's how astrology works, right? It's all about geocentric perspective, like where we see things from here, our vantage point here on this planet. This is how astrology works for us. So she's getting really far away from the sun, and she's got to go backwards to kind of catch up with him, which is going to set us up for quite the unpleasant March. So here she is at 10 degrees of Aries right now during the new moon, and she'll be going backwards until I believe it's 26 degrees of Pisces. So yeah, she goes retrograde March 1st at 10 degrees Aries, and then she'll be direct at 24 degrees Pisces on April 12th. So that's a little over 5, almost 6 weeks of Venus going retrograde, which will be quite the time. So let's talk about Venus retrograde a little bit. Whenever Venus goes retrograde, she's really just acting out of character. So she's the planet of love, abundance, and beauty, and everything abundant, everything creative and financial. So when she's going backwards, and she's in the sign of Aries right now, so she's acting really impulsive, spending without a second thought, making big money moves, not thinking really too far ahead down the road. But in retrograde, she's going to be rethinking some of these decisions she's made and saying, maybe I really didn't need that. Or maybe, maybe I should return this purchase. So there could be financial revisions that are coming through. There could also just be old lovers. Of course, Venus retrograde is the planet of love and romance. So your ex could be coming back around, sliding into those DMs, wanting a second chance, maybe offering up some sort of heartfelt apology. Now, remember, Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces. So that's where she's going to be spending some time during her retrograde cycle. So if this is happening, take it with a grain of salt, because maybe someone was hasty in the past. Maybe somebody made some decisions they really regret. And they want to talk it through, and maybe you're not interested in taking them back, but don't be too surprised if your skeletons in the closet from boyfriends, girlfriends past come back to life during this period of time. For better or for worse, it could be somebody you actually really wanted to talk to, or it could be somebody that like you were done with a long time ago and like, what are they doing here? But, don't be surprised when it happens, because it likely will, especially if you're a person with a lot of placements in Libra, Aries, Virgo, or Pisces, because this would all directly affect you. So also, I think the financial markets are probably going to take a nosedive come March. We've had too much turmoil so far this year without enough market reaction. And I think we're going to see that happen come March. And then we've got Mercury retrograde on top of that later in March. So and I've gone ahead and planned some trips for myself in March, and I'm sort of regretting that. And I will survive. It will be fine. But I'm kind of like, why did I do this to myself? But here we go. we'll survive. But Mercury retrograde is also going to be happening in March, but it won't happen till the second half of March. So March 15th and onward is when Mercury retrograde will be happening. And he'll be retrograde also in the sign of Pisces. So that's something that Pisces folks are going to be feeling as well. He turns retrograde March 15th at 9 degrees Aries, and then he'll be retrograding back into the latest degrees of Pisces and turn direct at on April 7th at 26 degrees of Pisces. So if you've got stuff right on the edge between Pisces and Aries, you're going to really be getting impacted by this dual retrograde cycle of both Mercury and Venus going retrograde. But we've got a lot of other things that are on the horizon that are really interesting. So we've got also the North Node is in Pisces. And when the North Node is in Pisces, it's an 18-month period. It's the most difficult place for the North Node to be. Luckily, it only happens every 18 years. So it's not, all that common, but it is happening right now. And we're just in the beginning of it, believe it or not. We're only 3 degrees into the North Node in Pisces journey. And he was conjunct Neptune a couple of weeks ago. And I really felt that personally coming, like bubbling up. And there was sort of like this like latent anger that came up for me personally that sort of just came up out of nowhere. There was no action, but I just woke up and really felt like these emotions bubbling up, really kind of without much cause. And, I just did my best not to take it out on other people and process it, journal, talk about my feelings with friends and stuff like that. But yeah, I really noticed that energy kicking in a way that was like, what is going on? And then I looked at my chart and I was like, oh, okay, well, this makes sense. Um, so we have the Neptune North Node conjunction happening still. They're not exactly on top of each other, but they're very, very close. So that's really coloring, part of this new moon, this new beginning cycle is that conjunction. And the North Node really is all about growth and destiny and challenges that we feel. It's not easy. Like whatever the North Node is in somebody's chart, it's always challenging. But it is also the challenge that we're destined to embrace and to overcome and to really master at some point in our lives. And so this is the collective North Node. And in Pisces, it really is about faith and having faith that the light will overcome the darkness and to not be afraid, and to stay grounded in sort of that beautiful cosmic connected life force that connects all of us. And so that's just a wellspring of creative inspiration and also life force that fuels every single living thing, not only on our planet but in the cosmos. That's what Neptune represents. It's kind of thought of as a higher octave of Venus at times. But so that's happening during this new moon. We also have Chiron. Chiron's still hovering at 20 degrees of Aries, where he has been for seemingly ever. Chiron's a very slow moving asteroid. He takes about 50 years to make his journey around the zodiac. So I'm not at all surprised that Chiron is kind of lingering, but does seem like he's been at that 20-degree mark for quite some time. So we have some interesting aspects. Those are all the planets that are in Pisces right now. And not all of these are planets. Some of them are just like the vertexes, mathematical point. Same with the North Node, South Node axis. But let's keep looking at the chart and see what else we can sort of learn about what is to unfold for all of us. So we have Uranus here. He's at 23 degrees of Taurus direct. And Uranus will be moving out of Taurus this year. And so will Neptune. Neptune will be moving out of Pisces I think it happens in March as well. Let me tell you when. It's Neptune is moving into Aries, um, March 30th. So that's going to definitely feel like a shocker to us too. That that's a really slow moving planet. I mean, if you remember back in November, we had Pluto move into Aquarius out of Capricorn. And now looking back last year and the prior years before that, felt all like relatively cozy and sort of like a warm hug in comparison to what's going on currently with Pluto and Aquarius, where it seems like there's much more of a sort of cold, hard, authoritative finger on the pulse of technology being used to control people versus the humanitarian side of things. But we're still in the very early beginnings of this, and the grassroots movements will arise. We're just very early in the process um, of that cycle. So what do we have going on with Taurus, with Uranus and Taurus? So Uranus is at 23 degrees of Taurus, and that's pretty close to being sextile with Mercury here at 24 degrees Pisces. So I do feel like there could be some unexpected positive news that really does feel supported during this new moon or very close after it, within a few days. It could be something that maybe you applied for, especially if you have water or earth sign placements at or near 24, 25, 23 degrees of those signs, like things that maybe you've been working towards or wanting to develop or cultivate, just kind of coming up as a sort of something that maybe you forgot about, coming back around and being like, oh yeah, like you've been accepted, or maybe you get tar Uranus and Taurus has to do with money a lot of times. So maybe a line of credit could be extended to you that you wanted. However, I would with Venus retrograde coming up, I would say be very mindful of your budget the next 6 weeks or so at the very least, just because of how volatile I do think the markets are going to get during that Venus retrograde phase. Um, so yeah, just be cautious, be careful, sort of prepare yourself in a way. Um, but I do think that this new moon can bring some really lovely, it's also trine or a sextile to the part of fortune. So we've got the part of fortune here for this new moon's at 25 degrees of Virgo. So making a harmonious trine with Uranus and Taurus, which is lovely. So there could be, I think, money coming in for some of this collective who are listening to this. Um, so just check your chart, see where those places are. If you've got anything that might be sextile or hitting that directly, you could definitely be feeling it. Next we have Jupiter. Jupiter is done with his retrograde phase for a while, and he's going to be speeding through Gemini for the next few months until he moves into Cancer this summer. But he's at 12 degrees Gemini, and he's direct now, which Jupiter directs a great energy, but in Gemini, he tends to overextend himself. He tends to be a little scattered and a little, um, like it's easy for him to say he'll do something and then realize later that his calendar is actually full and he can't do the things that he thought he could do. So just be kind of aware of that. But it looks like he's doing some nice things. We've got some a nice trine here. Well, it's Black Moon Lilith. So maybe there's some darkness happening in a kind of intriguing way. But he's working with Venus at 10 degrees. He's in a close sextile there. Although Venus will be going retrograde shortly, so that sextile will then actually be perfected later in the year after her retrograde phase at a different degree, and because Jupiter will have moved on from 12 degrees of Gemini. So if you have sorry, I've got dogs. They're all talking. Um, so yeah, if you've got points or planets in fire signs or air signs at 11, 12, 10 degrees, this could be a good new moon for you as well. Um, but just don't get overly comfortable or ambitious right now, especially with finances, because like I said, that Jupiter in Gemini likes to be optimistic and overcommit himself. But with Venus retrograde, she is going to rip the rug out from underneath folks in terms of love, finances, money, and even creative projects. So things that you thought were going to be moving forward, not going to be moving forward yet. They just give it a month or so, or well, 6 weeks really. The last time we saw a Venus retrograde was when the writer strike happened. Venus was in another fire sign. She was in the sign of Leo, and she was really like fighting for the rights of writers, the rights of writers, to be paid fairly and not be written out of the script of Hollywood and being replaced with AI. So we're going to see other financial sort of issues arising, but I think it could be coming up with our military, and our armed forces, and potentially the way that the government uses money, but also the way that religious institutions use money, on a more public stage because of where she's transiting through during this retrograde period. And if you're in America, I mean, everything is just so up in the air right now anyway. It's kind of not, it doesn't really take an astrologer to tell you this, but I think maybe some people are thinking that it's all going to be just fine when maybe it won't be. Um, at least in the near term future. There's a lot of stuff that needs to get figured out. And it's going to take a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy from people who have those qualities in spades as superpowers, really. Because this is a year that's all about endings. Next year is about beginnings, but this year is about things falling apart a little bit. And I don't say that to scare you, but just to let you know. Um, and so, yeah, we've got Jupiter at 12 degrees Gemini, and he's talking with Venus. So just don't overextend yourself financially. That's sort of the message that tells me. Even if there is good news that's coming through, just sit it out for a little while, sit on the sidelines and kind of watch the players play and keep that information to yourself, and, make smart, intelligent moves. Don't get overly optimistic and too you know overzealous with your spending, because it could really hurt you in the long run now. We also have Mars. Let's look at Mars. Mars has been retrograde since December, and finally he'll be direct during this new moon. He goes direct after being retrograde for so long on February 23rd. So I'm recording this on February 20th. And I can really feel just the energy. It feels like everything is just sort of moving along and kind of slowing down because Mars is stationing direct. When a planet goes retrograde, it has to, like, it goes past the sun and then it goes backwards, and when it's slowing down to start going direct again. Um, sorry, I've got a talking dog. When it goes direct again, um, when it goes direct again, it has to slow down again. It's called stationing. And so that can really just slow the momentum of things down even further. Um, so yeah, he'll be at 17 degrees of Cancer, so another water sign. So he'll be working more or less in harmony with Saturn here. He's 3 degrees away from being exactly trine to where Saturn is in Pisces. So just keep that in mind. Like Saturn and Mars, when they come together in harmony, are very authoritarian. It is like a general of an army giving commands, giving structure to the warriors. Mars is the warrior, Saturn is the commander. So there could be a sort of feeling of a mission being given, some like a sort of strategy being put in place, and people kind of rolling out around this time. It's not exact, but as Mercury, or not Mercury, as Mars moves closer to that 20 degree of Cancer mark, where it would be meeting up with Saturn, then we're going to see that energy really coming together. And that can be formidable. Mars is the planet of the warrior, of the armed forces, of aggression, of activity. And he's been sleeping for some time, and he is going to be coming, like waking up with a mission. And Saturn is going to be there with the marching orders, I think. Um, so that'll be beneficial for water signs for sure, as well as earth signs, with personal placements at or near 20 degrees. So look in your chart, see if you have that. So we've also got Pluto. We've talked about everybody else. This is the rising sign for this particular full moon is 25 degrees of Virgo. We've got the part of fortune right there conjunct. So I do think there's like money to be made, but it could be maybe not in the most traditional ways during this Venus retrograde. Maybe it's instead of buying and holding on to stocks in the stock market, maybe it's selling and short selling things that, as the market goes down, you can short the market on the way down. I don't love that strategy because I feel like it bets against the human spirit. But I think during a Venus retrograde phase, it could be a good strategy financially for the short term. Especially if you know there are stocks out there that, you don't love politically, could be a way to go. Um, you know, you can pick those for yourself. Um, could be fun to watch that happen. Then we have the South Node. The South Node's in Virgo at 27 degrees. And we have Black Moon Lilith down here. I've been looking at her lately. She's at 10 degrees Libra. So wherever Lilith is in a chart, she's activating some darker energies to come out. So that'll be interesting. She's quite strong. And in Libra, that's a sign traditionally ruled by Venus, and she's opposite Venus here. So there could be some of those Lilith qualities coming out to play now, especially right as Venus goes retrograde in this sign opposite that Black Moon Lilith. I think she could feel kind of triggered now. I love Venus, but she's not going to be too happy during this new moon. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have Pluto. Pluto's down here, at 2 degrees, almost 3 degrees of Aquarius. He's 1 degree away from the asteroid Pallas. And that's interesting because Pallas is all about wisdom and strategy. Pluto is all about transformation. So I think as these two come together, there could be a sort of strategy for the grassroots, to sort of come together and start to kind of stand up for themselves and to be, sort of serve their communities. And lastly, so this is a fun glyph. And I wanted to talk about this guy here. He's at 8 degrees of Aquarius right now. And the glyph is this cute little heart with an arrow through it. This is the glyph for Eros. And Eros is associated with Pisces and as well as Aphrodite. So may have spent a lot of time talking about Venus during this episode, but considering everything we've got going on with her in the very near future, I think it's relevant and apt. Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces, and she's about to go retrograde. But her lover was Eros, and there's this really famous myth in Greek mythology where um, Venus and Eros, or Aphrodite and Eros, were playing in a river, having some romantic dalliances when they came up on, I think it was Typhon, and to get away from, it was a giant. Typhon was this giant. He was a son of Gaia and one of the Titans, and he was really scary. And to get away from the scary giant, Eros and Aphrodite turn into fish and they swim away in the river. And so that's sort of indicative of the the sort of spiritual quality and the love, like that, also the transformation from being romantically involved physically and taking a risk and turning into something different together, and getting into the water and going with the flow and escaping danger. And I think that's a really beautiful message to sort of end on today, is that going with the flow messaging. With so many planets in Pisces, it's easy to get overwhelmed emotionally. And I mean, Pisces is just such a profoundly beautiful sign and energy, but it's also very difficult in terms of being able to decipher what's real, what's not. And it's so full of the ability to be fooled during Piscean times when we've got so many planets in Pisces, because we're more susceptible to flattery, and we're just not at our strongest. But trusting that you'll be okay, trusting in spirit and the universe to take care of you, and coming together from a sense of love. And that kind of love it's a universal love for your common man. It's not necessarily always romantic love, but it's that that deep empathy place that I think every one of us has somewhere in us when we see somebody in a bad way and we want to help. Um, and it's sort of loving people in spite of themselves, in spite of their politics or their um, religious beliefs, or like really just seeing them for a person, a human who is living an experience, and having empathy for that experience, and operating from a place of care in that way. Um, it's easy to say, on a podcast, and it's a lot harder to do in reality. Um, Sorry, I'm petting Pickle. She hasn't been feeling very good lately. So I just want to make sure I'm giving her lots of attention. She's just sitting here next to me. Just kind of being my emotional support bud right now. Um, but yeah, so I know it's easy to say all these things, like be empathetic and watch out for people trying to spread lies and delusions. Um, but I think that there is some really beautiful messaging within the idea of going with the flow and trusting in the universe to take care of you. We're all on this planet for a reason, and I have to believe that that reason is to learn to love more profoundly, um, even people who are different from us, because it points out our own strengths and our own strength of character traits and things that we can improve on. Um, and so, yeah, try to focus on universal love moving forward, because that I think is the real, the real sort of priceless weapon that you cannot fight that with guns. You can't fight that with anything. You can't defeat the human spirit if you really practice loving each other. And that kind of love can just be, being a good friend and listening to your neighbors when they're going through things, and be like expressing empathy. Um, because if we can do that and come together to help each other heal and to be there for our communities, then we all become stronger for it. So with that, I'll let you decide where this new moon is happening in your charts. If you guys have questions or would like to sign up for a workshop, we can do that on Zoom. Head over to the website, bloodmoonmilk.com, and click on workshop. And love to hear from you if you're out there in podcast land listening or watching on YouTube. Leave a comment, share the show with a friend. I'd love to see people actually listen to this. I know it's kind of long-winded and doesn't make a lot of sense a lot of times if you're new to astrology, but I do think that it's a worthwhile practice, and can lead to a lot of spiritual richness. Um, if you pay attention, if you let it guide you and being present in your day to day, so that you don't feel so overwhelmed and kind of helps you make sense of this crazy world we live in. So until next time, I'm Aurora, and I wish you all the best the stars have to offer.